So I'll be continuing on a topic that we started yesterday of flourishing. And we had given some definitions for the word, for the teaching, mostly in an individual sense of flourishing. And today I'm going to pick a line from Seth Segall's definition that expands at this a little bit more. And he says that flourishing also depends on our mutual recognition that we're not just or only individuals, but that we're members of families, communities, societies, and ecosystems. So I have seen a radical shift over my time teaching Dharma personally and as being a member of the Sangha and other Sanghas, that Buddhism is no longer solely found in the suttas or through scholarly translations of suttas or the Pali Canon, but it's really made a shift to be found in everyday life, contrasted with other fields and other philosophies. And I find myself often talking about the Dharma of TV shows or Dharma of movies. Like that's because it's part of my life and the articles that I read. And I've come to see that many writers are influenced by Buddhism. In fact, on the writers' strike right now, I don't know how many have Buddhist leanings or Buddhist understandings. And the fact that they're striking even affects the Dharma. It's something that we're talking about. It's not excluded from Dharma teachings. And recently, two people sent me an article from the New York Times, and it was about Orna, I'll pronounce her last name, Guralnik. She's a psychologist and a psychoanalyst, and she does a TV show called Couples Therapy. And it's on Showtime, and it's been very engaging for me. But she talks about in this article that in the past, when she's been seeing couples, if she talked to them about the climate, race, power, privilege, they would just shrug, and there would be like an awkward silence. There wouldn't really be much start of a conversation. But since the pandemic, since the progressive movements have engaged our psyches, she's seeing it really influences them strongly, their relationships with each other, with their families, with their communities. And I've seen that too. I've seen that happen in the Dharma. And that basically it's come into our meditation sittings. It's no longer something that's just a conversation you have outside the Dharma. It's conversations we're having within our Sanghas. Now, Orna, she has a definition of privilege that I really like. She calls it a force larger than ourselves. That bigger social forces run through us, animating us, pitting us against one another, whatever our conscious intentions may be. So she's really putting this privilege into not just individuals, but into a societal realm that we're living in. It's a soup. I often say that, but it's a soup we're swimming in. And I may not want to pit myself against my father who has different political views or et cetera, and I may not want to perpetuate harm, but there it is. It's in the social world that we're being pit against each other, that we're having these tendencies in a larger society, and it takes a toll on us. And, again, I have seen this in our practice reflected in the way people talk about their experience, about the way they've engaged in social movements, in progressive movements, the way that we've had resistance, the way we've protested. And it seems to me there's a sense of self-awareness, more self-awareness about the ways we gather, who we're drawn to, who we interact with, and how we spend our time, and the way we were raised, how different it is now than then. And the direction in meditation is to actually talk about these in our from our experience, so where we're at now with them. So it's an interesting time for me. I'm turning 60 on Wednesday, and this year I had a big birthday party, and I'm not a big birthday party kind of person. And it's a kind of a sweet spot for me. It is a type of flourishing that I was able to, at this party, showcase some of my creative arts that I've really thrown myself into during the pandemic. Most of my body parts are working. I only have one arm that doesn't. My memory is pretty good. I'm just starting to enter that time of, not remembering things, but it hasn't really affected my daily living. And my sense of, flourishing is really directly related to having a meaningful life, meaningful work, meaningful relationships, having you all be part of a larger Sangha. But in this flourishing, it doesn't mean there's an absence of dukkah, of pain, of hurt, or vulnerability, that's still a part of my experience. And even when I'm in an upcycle, I'm aware that others aren't. There's parts of the world that are not, our political system is not, our climate is not. And also it's just interesting, during this time, my husband, who's from Iran, is telling me more about what's happening over there, and that more people are being executed for protesting, and that they're installing cameras everywhere to really monitor the way women are wearing headscarves. And it's so scary. It's unfathomable to me that this, rule of hijab is being enforced. And it reminds me of other periods of time in history where laws are being enforced that the people don't agree with. And so yesterday in my meditation, we were talking about individual flourishing. And one of the phrases that I heard early on from a Buddhist philosopher, Nagarjuna, it kept coming through my mind. And, I've studied Buddhist philosophy, so the phrase is samsara and nibbana arise together. Now, samsara is considered the trap that we're born into, and nibbana is considered the freedom from that trap. But the way that it kept going in my mind was it eventually became problems and solutions come together. Problems and solutions come together. And I started to, remember this is why we face dukkha, why we are interested in dukkha, that in the dukkha or the samsara or the trap of our pain, that in there's solution, there's freedom, there's a different perspective or multiple perspectives. And the way it came was very relaxing and kind of a downshifting sense in my meditation, so that I believed it more. So this happens often in meditation when something comes in a calm state of mind. It really resonates with me and it hits me in a certain way. And yet I still felt that there was an intuitive knowing within this phrase. And it also made me realize I was able to think, even while it was coming into my sitting, is how easy it is to overlook small evolutionary changes or solutions, or how difficult it is at times to really give credit for some of the changes that are happening. Notice them, state them, pay more attention to them than to the problem. And one example for me that came to mind this morning is the fact that we are talking about systemic racism so predominantly, so much in popular culture, and it wasn't even a phrase that I was aware of as a child growing up. This to me feels like a direction towards solution, that we can actually articulate and talk about difficult things in our history as a country. Um, so I'm going to just end with one of the directions. I'm kind of back to a flourishing idea that for me feels individual and in a larger scope is that I really want to grow my care. I want to be able to hold more people, um, understand more of the world, reduce the ignorance, my ignorance of other people and other situations. And part of that is to not get burnt out. And that is a very large value that I have. And as a result, I've been feeling burnt out lately. I've been doing a lot of extra work with the book, and I've been doing my teaching duties and administrative duties, and I haven't been able to find a way out of it really. So, one of the things that I'm planning to do is to reduce my hours in June and to call it a sabbatical and to have some time where I can rest a little bit and grow my care in a different way rather than being on the front lines with it, go a bit inward and have time to vision, what some things are going to look like for myself, for our Sangha, for others. And I'm not fully sure how it will work or how it will happen. And I'm not sure how it will impact us. Likely I'll be teaching still at the daily online. That's one commitment that I'd like to keep. Um, but, I don't know. I might not be able to. So it's a to be continued uncertainty. Maybe even I won't know until the day of. But I think that's part of burnout is that I don't have the resources right now, the kind of built up resources that I can rely upon normally when I'm more rested and not overworked. And the overwork is my own tendency. It's not like it's something that anybody has put on me. It's one of the ways that I tend to go. So I think I'm over time, and that's about a good place to end. And we'll now do our practice together.